This mini training. My name's Kim Knight, Director and Founder of the Emotional Alchemy Academy. In this mini training, I'm going to show you the 5 steps to dissolving emotions, which is one of the most necessary and useful tools you can have in your toolbox if you want to avoid getting ill or you need to heal from chronic illness. Because in 25 years of studying this topic, I found that negative emotions play a huge role in the build-up of illness, including conditions like anxiety, depression, chronic fatigue, digestive issues, fibromyalgia, and a whole host of other health conditions. So we must learn how to self-process our emotions. And if we know how, it doesn't have to be that difficult. So alchemy is the process of transforming one form of matter into another, such as lead into gold. But emotional alchemy is the process of dissolving and transmuting negative emotions. And one of the things that is really important to understand is that once emotions are generated inside the body, they don't just disappear. So for example, if you feel sad or angry or hurt or disappointed about something and you don't do something with that energy, it's going to stick around inside your body and it's going to literally stay in every cell, tissue, and organ of your body. And if you don't deal with it over time, a compounding of many emotions will turn the dis-ease into disease. Now, most people don't know what to do with their feelings. And in many cases, they don't even know that they're harboring and storing old feelings. And what most people are doing unconsciously is suppressing, storing, burying, ignoring, pushing away, resisting their feelings. But this isn't going to get rid of them. Just because we're ignoring them and suppressing them does not get rid of them. They just stick around. And this is due to a law of physics which says that once energy is created or generated, it can't be destroyed. However, energy can be transformed. It can be transformed from one type of energy into another. And this is what emotional alchemy is about. So let's go through these 5 steps of emotional awareness, or the 5 steps to dissolving emotions. Now, the first step is to become aware of what we're feeling. Now, as I mentioned before, a lot of people are not aware of what they're feeling. So if I give an example, when I had chronic fatigue, I had no idea that it was because I was storing all my energy inside of me and using all my energy to hold all my energy in to such an extent I was chronically exhausted. I also didn't know that when I had depression, I was unconsciously depressing my emotions. Now, once I started to learn about emotions and their effect on creating illness, I understood that depression was the depressing of emotions and chronic fatigue was the chronic blocking of emotions. And therefore, in order to clear the depression and the fatigue, I needed to clear my emotions. But the problem was, I didn't know the emotions were there. And this is what is so fascinating. We're not aware of what we're not aware of. So the very, very first step is to become aware. So we need to become aware of what we're feeling inside on a moment-to-moment basis. And this takes practice and training. So the first step in dissolving emotions is obviously to be aware that we have an emotion that we want to dissolve. So we become aware of an uncomfortable feeling, and rather than ignoring it or suppressing it or diverting our attention by keeping busy, which is a very common action to avoid feeling, we stop and we consciously become aware of what we're feeling, and then we decide to locate and label the feeling. Now, there are literally thousands of emotions. According to researchers, we have around 34,000 different emotions. Now, when I work with clients, we distill it down to about 6 to 10 core emotions that we need to be aware of. But whatever it is that we're feeling, we need to be able to locate that feeling inside our body, and it will be somewhere inside our body, and we need to be able to label it. In other words, we need to be able to say, oh, I'm feeling angry, or I'm feeling sad, or I'm feeling hurt, or I'm feeling annoyed, or whatever the emotion is. And in the Emotional Alchemy Academy, we use the compass of emotions in order to identify our feelings. The second step in dissolving emotions is to acknowledge what we're feeling without judgment. So once we've identified what we're feeling, for example, sadness, then we need to acknowledge what we're feeling without judgment. Now, many people have been brought up to think that it's bad to have bad feelings and that they're bad for having bad feelings. But there are no bad feelings. Just like if you have a battery and it has a positive and a negative end, that doesn't mean the positive end of the battery is good and the negative end of the battery is bad. They're both neutral in their own way and they have a different function. And this is the case with emotions. They have an intelligent purpose. They're there to communicate a meaning and a message to us, and it's up to us to interpret the meaning behind the emotions. So we have to learn not to judge ourselves for having negative, inverted commas, emotions. And the first step, or rather the second step here, is to acknowledge the truth of how we're feeling without judging ourselves or the emotion as bad. So what we could say is we meet and greet the feeling. The next step is we need to accept what we're feeling, which is slightly different from acknowledgement. In other words, rather than resisting or pushing away the feeling or trying to bury it and suppress it and push it under the carpet, we need to consciously accept the truth of how we're feeling and welcome it with open arms. Now, this is quite different for most people initially because we've trained ourselves very well from a young age to push away and suppress and store and bury and swallow our emotions. So it may sound counterintuitive to actually accept how we're feeling. But the golden rule here is what you resist persists. So if you unconsciously resist what you're feeling, that feeling will stay there. And in fact, much of the uncomfortable feeling of having negative feelings is actually due to the resisting of the feeling as opposed to the accepting of it. So we need to turn towards the emotion rather than away from it, and we need to fully 100% accept the truth of how we're feeling. And you will be surprised how this step starts to dissolve the energy. And in the Emotional Alchemy Academy, members learn how to do this with the This is Welcome technique. Now, once we've accepted the feeling, we then need to give it even more attention. We need to put all our focus and attention on that feeling. Now, remember, by now we have located it in the body and we have labeled it. So now that we've done that and we've acknowledged it and accepted it, we give it attention. We focus the light of our consciousness on that feeling. We observe it and we give ourselves permission to fully feel the feeling. Now, interestingly enough, one of the core fears that people have is to feel their feelings fully. But once we know how to do this and we learn that it's actually not that scary to do it, we can start practicing this and we will start to see miracles. So once we go through these 4 steps of awareness, acknowledgement, acceptance, and attention, by this stage, you are going to start noticing the energy transforming inside your body. And this is alchemy. It's the transforming of one type of energy into another. So the metaphor that we can use here is that ice can turn into water, which can turn into steam. And this is literally what we're doing with our emotions. We're unfreezing our emotions from inside ourselves so that they can clear out. Now, by this stage, you should have noticed a significant transformation in how you're feeling. And you'll probably notice that the energy has started to dissolve, the emotion is lessened, and you feel better. However, it may also be that some of the energy remains, in which case we need to go to the next level. Now, there are two stages to this next level, which is what I call internal action or external action. And this will all depend on the type of situation. Internal action is about identifying the original root cause issue which triggered the original emotion. And what I mean by this is that usually when we're triggered into an emotional response in the now, it usually has its roots in another event which happened earlier in our life. And often this event or similar types of events can have happened multiple times, but usually there'll be one root original event. So what we need to do is to connect the dots between all the different times this similar issue, which has triggered this similar type of emotional response, has happened. And in the Emotional Alchemy Academy, we call this joining the dots of the surface and the deep. From an external action point of view, we may need to communicate with certain people in our life in order to relieve ourselves of the pressure of the emotion which is inside of us. This will be particularly important if what we're feeling has something to do with somebody mistreating us. So if we've been taken advantage of, bullied, treated unkindly, treated unfairly, etc., the body is likely to generate emotions such as upset, disappointment, hurt, sadness, fear, anger. And one of the things that we need to learn to do is how to communicate these feelings honestly with the other party so that we create clear boundaries and we prevent this happening again. And this is essential if we literally want to get these emotions off our chest. And in the Emotional Alchemy Academy, people learn how to do this with the Authentic Me technique. Now, in the many years that I've worked with clients with chronic illness, such as chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, digestive issues, ME, and many more health conditions, I have not yet met one client who did not need to learn how to communicate and express themselves honestly with other people. It's a huge issue for people with these chronic fatigue and pain conditions, and it's absolutely essential that we learn how to create clear boundaries and put ourselves first and say no without feeling guilty and a whole host of other things. So once we've taken these 5 steps, then we're going to find that our emotions are going to start clearing from our energy field, our mind, and our body. We're going to be feeling a lot of relief, a lot of lightness, more inner peace, and we'll be able to get on with our day feeling empowered and free rather than walking around the whole time feeling weighed down by these emotions. And to finish with, a really important reminder. Thoughts are rational, emotions are irrational, and you can't think your feelings away. We need to learn how to feel our feelings away. And when we do that, they will magically dissolve, and this is emotional alchemy. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation. If you're seriously interested in learning how to self-process emotions, I recommend the EA Level 1 and Level 2 training programs. The Level 1 training goes into great detail in how emotions work, their purpose, their meaning, their intelligence. And Level 2 training teaches you how to self-process negative emotions out of your body-mind. You can find details of these and other courses on emotionalalchemyacademy.com.